how long have you been with Twilio, and how has marketing and PR evolved as the company has grown?
Well, I've been at Twilio for 7.5 years, and Twilio was a company started by developers for developers. So we didn't do a ton of marketing in the early days. Marketing was really what we call our dev network, our dev angels out in the field at hackathons working with developers. And then we, of course, had our PR team, which is a very small and mighty team telling stories about the company. But over the years, as Twilio has evolved and grown and had to bring on much more enterprise-sized customers and appeal to a new market, marketing has to grow alongside that. So the marketing team has grown from what was very small when I joined to over 100 people. That encompasses everything. And we work very closely with them. Comms and PR work within marketing, which is important, I think, because, comms has to be communications and PR, you have to be at the forefront of telling the company's story and the vision. And the marketing really has to tell the more like short-term, targeting the customers on more of the short-term company initiatives. And we have to be in sync on that. I think the PR sometimes has to come first. You really have to be thinking 5 years ahead to tell the company vision from a PR perspective, because you're sort of setting the stage for the future with PR. So that's how we think about it. The most important thing that a lot of younger companies maybe do wrong is they don't bring comms and PR to the table. And they think of, okay, we'll build the products and we have the business strategy. And once we have that all buttoned up, we'll tell PR, and PR can go pitch a story to a reporter. But I think PR is so much more impactful when the executives bring you in at the decision-making phase, and so you can really see what's going on and what decisions are going to be made and how the strategy is going to roll out and why we're launching certain products, so that the PR team can be really targeted with the stories they tell, and so that it really supports the whole company vision. I think if you wait to bring PR until the end, you'll be less happy with the results, because the PR team can really help you with the narrative and the storytelling around your entire company vision, whether that's your product or a new business strategy, an executive you're bringing on, a board member. PR needs to be there to understand truly the root of those decisions so that they can then amplify it to the market. So that's my most important thing. Twilio has been incredible about that, but you have to bring PR to the table early on.
Share one or two specific PR successes at Twilio, and what did it take to make them happen?
My favorite story I have ever told at Twilio is a few years ago, we acquired an email company called SendGrid. And Twilio is a communications platform. And at that point, we sold APIs for voice, messaging, chat, WhatsApp, et cetera. Any channel that you needed to communicate with your customers, your developers could use Twilio's APIs to do that. Email was the one that was missing. But my CEO, Jeff, and the CEO of SendGrid, Samir Dalakia, happened to be on a ski trip because they shared an investor. And Samir had to stay in his hotel room and would do a call while the rest of the executives went out to breakfast. And Jeff brought a breakfast burrito back for Samir because Samir had missed breakfast, dropped it off. And Samir always had shared the story with us. Like, that's how I knew that this was like a Kismet experience, because like we were the same. He was like so caring and thoughtful of me. It wasn't just a business transaction. I felt like our cultures would mix. So when we were announcing the deal, we had announced the sign, and then the deal was going to close. And I was trying to pitch the story to a Forbes reporter, and he was like, well, the news is out. There's no story there. And so I pitched him the $3 billion breakfast burrito, and that became the Forbes headline. I always say people care about people more than they care about companies. You have to get to the human interest story behind the business story.
I saw also that you had a survey that with a headline on one of, I think it was Fox or something, was 22% of Americans would rather spend the night in jail than contact customer service.
We do surveys a lot, because I think if you have this technology that does a certain thing, you can pitch the features, but that's not what's interesting to a reader. And frankly, if you're going on a feature war with a bunch of companies, you're probably not going to get press. But if you can take a big step back and think of it from a consumer's perspective, like, why would this technology ever matter to me? Why would a contact center technology matter to me, who's like sitting on my couch? But if you can sort of like find the fun in it and relate to a consumer who's like, I can't call customer service. Like if I get disconnected one more time, I'm going to like blow a fuse. That's how you get an interesting headline. So we always try and do that when we do surveys, like, okay, what is the consumer, how is a consumer impacted by this tech problem that we're trying to solve? And I think you have to do that. That's what's interesting to a reader. And it sort of, dumbs down the technology that if you're not an engineer, you're probably not interested in every feature that we're trying to share about.
How do you make opportunities for mainstream media coverage? And do you find that trade publications also play a significant role?
You become public, you basically have a quarterly, almost guaranteed opportunity to talk to the more business press, because a lot of them cover quarterly earnings periods. So we always think about around earnings, not just how we're sharing our financial results, but that's our opportunity to reach more of like a C-suite audience with the press we're going to get around earnings. So that's one opportunity to do it. I found a lot of these outlets also have increased their beats outside of just straight business or tech news and cover more cultural topics. And we try it, as an employer or as an executive leadership, and we always look to those. We have really strong leadership at Twilio who's very involved and has been very deliberate about leadership and values. And so we've taken the opportunity to share that externally, and that's been a way for us to break into some of the business outlets. I would not, the tech outlets and the trade outlets are critical. You cannot like poo-poo them, because we've been working a lot at Twilio at how to measure. We've been trying to measure leads to the website after we get coverage. And that's a very hard thing to measure. I think if anyone ever figured that out in PR, that would be a big business. But we've done our own tracking to figure out, when we get coverage, does that impact website traffic? And we've actually found that sometimes some of our trade coverage, for example, we one time had a hit in a healthcare trade about a customer who uses Twilio in the healthcare space. And that drove more talk to sales leads to the website than a story we got in the same week that was more general in a big business outlet. So I think you really have to have a two-pronged approach. You have to tell the more customer specific and technology stories to the trades and to the vertical outlets. And then you tell the big business and the leadership stories to the business outlets.
Why is it so hard to measure impact?
I think measuring impact is the hardest thing to do in PR. Luckily, Twilio's executives, I sort of understand this challenge. Very difficult because, marketing is very specific. It's a link that you click on and you know exactly how much impact an ad has had. PR is not that way, and for good reason. Like, journalists are not there to market our products. They're not linking back to the specific website of the product we're trying to sell when we do an announcement. And I think that's fine. I think you just have to, educate your team on what PR is. It's brand awareness. Honestly, it's the best bang for your buck. It's so much more affordable and impactful than if you compared it apples to marketing. The thing we do at Twilio that I think was very helpful is we developed we call them our top 20. We have 20 outlets and we reevaluate them every year, but based on whatever our strategic business strategy is, we pick 20 outlets that we think will hit our audience, the audience we're trying to speak to. And every quarter we measure how many we've engaged with and how many have resulted in the coverage. And that helps us a lot. It helps us be more strategic with the stories we tell, because we think, okay, if we want to talk to that audience and we haven't spoken to this outlet in a while, what's a story that outlet is going to care about for their audience? And that's not always the top 20 outlets that someone might write down. When we had healthcare focus, we had healthcare trades on that top 20 list. And so we change that every year. We don't change it more frequently than that, but we change it annually. And that's how we measure if our strategy is working from a PR point of view.
You've been in the PR business for a long time. Is there a specific major lesson you've learned that you want to impart, or misconception that you see over and over, anything like that, just based on your experience?
Best advice is to be very creative and push yourself to think beyond the technology story and really figure out the human behind the story who built that product, what consumer is going to be impacted by this change, and tell the story from that perspective. It is just, you will never break through by talking about feature products. That can be the third line in your narrative, but the start has to be the big picture and how it impacts the consumer. And if you can talk about the human interest story, tell the little nugget. And what we do is we interview our executives before a product, before it's a product launch, we interview an executive and say, okay, tell us why we created this product. And often they were in a room with a customer, and this customer was saying, this is just a massive issue. Maybe they were threatening to leave. Maybe they thought a competitor product was better. And there is a narrative there and an interesting story that a reporter would want to hear, and that a consumer reading the story will want to hear. So I would say, go beyond the tech, find the human interest, figure out the human story behind the technology. Advice is, I think being human with a reporter is the most important thing. You can tell a reporter you're not going to comment without being cold and writing back just no comment. I try and get on the phone, explain a little bit why we're not going to share. And just, build a relationship, have meetings with reporters, ask them about their families, get to know them, figure out what they're being asked to do in their beat, and don't be intimidated by the other side of the equation. And I think that building those relationships with reporters and having your people that you can call on is really important.